Chapter 14, The Miserable Life of Bernie LeBaron, Fists and Friends. My mind reeled. I stood up. I knew something like this was going to happen, and I hadn't even written her a letter. Missy had never given me the address. I stumbled down the hallway like a drunk. "Bernie," Aunt Elsie called. "Bernie, you should talk about this." I didn't want to talk. Why did women and girls always want to talk? I didn't want to see anyone. I wanted to be alone. I dropped my bag on the floor of my bedroom and fell to my knees. I curled up in a ball and cried like an ocean was trying to burst from my eyes and rip my chest apart. My baby sister had died and been buried while my stupid, useless essay was being published in the town paper. I thought I knew what pain was when my mom died and when my dad gave me away. I thought I knew what suffering was when I had been ripped from my family and thrown amongst near strangers. While I lay on the floor as the darkness settled over the world, I just wanted to die. That's what I got for loving my mom and my baby sister. They got taken away from me. Dad had taken Missy too, or at least he kept her from me. He was the one that was supposed to protect and love the family he had created. But what had he done? One way or another, he had ripped us all apart, stolen us away from each other, kept us from being the family we should have been. And Elsie found me curled up on the floor. "Bernie," her voice quivered. She knelt beside me and pulled my hands away from my face, lifting me up into a hug. I couldn't talk, not with a knot the size of France stuck in my throat. We cried together for a long time while I breathed in her smell of antiseptic and vanilla. Even Uncle Jerry refrained from criticizing my father when he found out what had happened. His jaw muscles kept flexing and he coughed a lot. Later, as we sat around the table, Aunt Elsie made us all a cup of mint tea. She said it would make me feel better. "I'll call the school and tell them you'll be absent tomorrow," Aunt Elsie said. "No," I blurted out. "I want to go to school." Aunt Elsie stared at me for a minute, then she nodded. I don't think she ever understood, but I couldn't stand the thought of sitting around the house, living inside my own head all day, not with all the memories of Emily running through it, and knowing that I couldn't even go to her funeral because they had already buried her. Why had they done that? Why wouldn't somebody tell us? What was left of my family was slipping from me like sand through my fingers, and I couldn't do a thing about it. Not a thing. The next day, Brock pushed me too far. He decided to punch me in the shoulder while we were going into math class. He didn't hit me hard. It was just a stupid boy punch. But not today. Not after everything he had done to me, and not after Emily. I turned and punched him in the shoulder so hard that he stumbled sideways. His eyes opened wide in shock for a moment before his lip lifted in a vicious sneer. He put up his fists. "Oh, you want to be a tough guy today, huh, puke? Come on." I didn't know if he was just bluffing. It didn't matter. That was the excuse I was looking for. I dropped my books and lashed out with all the fury and pain I had bottled up for all these months. I don't know how many punches I landed before Brock fell to his knees and covered his head. I think I hit him a few more times before I realized what I was doing and stopped. It happened so fast that his friends just watched with open mouths. I don't think they believed that a scrawny toothpick like me would ever stand up to them. Two of them started toward me like they wanted to squash me when Carl appeared at my side. He shook his head. He didn't have to flex his biceps to stop them in their tracks. They hesitated and then bent to help Brock to his feet. He never looked at me. He just went into his math class and sat down. "Thanks," I said. "Anytime," Carl said. You might think that boxing Brock's ears would make me feel better, but it didn't. It made me feel worse. I was so angry that when Tatiana asked me what was wrong, I said, "It's none of your business." I know, I'm a jerk. But if I told her about Emily, I'd have to tell her about my dad and Missy and my mom, and I just couldn't do it. I didn't want her to know. Heck, I didn't want anyone to know, especially not her. "Fine," she said, and whirled away with a swish of her hair. I could smell the scent of apples as she left. Maybe I should have stayed home after all. After such a depressing day at school, I wasn't surprised to find Jed waiting for me at the mailbox. I figured he was finally going to give me the what for about the cameras. Instead, he said, "I've got a proposition for you." I shrugged without understanding what he meant and too depressed to care. "I need some help around the house," he said. "What would you say to helping me out a couple of times a week? I'll pay you minimum wage." For the first time that day, my brain actually engaged. Money? Only 4 things could really catch my attention: wild animals, pretty girls, food, and money. Not necessarily in that order. I shrugged again. "Sure," I said. We shook hands to seal the deal. His hand was so big that my hand completely disappeared in his grip. My fingers folded in on themselves until I thought they were all going to snap. I don't know why I had agreed to work for the man I thought was a murderer and a camera thief, but I did.